big Pokémon. Oh, well, yeah, that's basically it. That's the video. You can play the outro. I'm kidding, obviously. When you first hear the term big Pokémon, many of your first thoughts may have been something like Wailord, obviously with it being one of the biggest in the series, and having plenty of jokes about it being made in the community. But, did you know? Wailord is actually the second largest Pokémon, with him only being beaten out by Eternatus. And while they will play a big role in the video later, it's not the point of this video. Pokémon has had a strange history of large Pokémon appearing in the series, and by this I'm referring to Pokémon that are far larger than their regular counterparts. And we're not talking about some slight height difference. No siree. We're talking 5'11" versus 6 foot. So I want to dedicate this video to cataloging each time this has happened in the series to date, and possibly figuring out why this is such a common concept that has persisted through the franchise. And to find our first example of this, we actually have to take a look at the anime.
Mystery at the lighthouse!
We see our first appearance of a giant Pokémon in the episode Mystery of the Lighthouse. After catching a Krabby, Ash, Brock, and Misty look for a place to stay for the night, with them ultimately finding a lighthouse. After being let in, Ash calls Professor Oak to check up on his newly caught Krabby, just for him to learn that Gary has also caught one, being about 3 times the size of Ash's. Now you could argue this is the first example of a large Pokémon, which, I guess? But it's only really here to set up the fact that Pokémon can be way bigger than they usually are. We also learn this lighthouse belongs to the one and only Bill the Pokémon expert. I love Bill. He's awesome. With him being here for the express purpose of looking for this mysterious Pokémon, even saying it's possibly one of the biggest, and going on to also say it's the only one of its species, and with that, he seeks to bond with it. Later in the episode we see it approach, only visible by shadows, surrounded by the fog of the night sky, with its eyes shining a bright yellow, and it seeming to sing. From what we can see, we can easily tell from the shape that this is meant to be a Dragonite. Then James proceeds to shoot it with a missile, obviously. What do you expect from a group called Team Rocket? But after it easily swipes him away with its tail, the Pokémon wanders back off into the sea, never to be seen again in the series. Even after the episode ends, everyone still doesn't seem to know what the Pokémon was, only ever calling it rare or special, which left me conflicted. Bill would obviously know what a Dragonite is, considering early in the episode he seems to know all 150 Pokémon in the region, which is actually the entire Pokédex excluding Mew. Yeah, I'm kind of a Pokémon nerd. Yet somehow he couldn't tell what this was. And why did he say it's one of a kind? So after doing some research, I found a Reddit post theorizing this could have originally meant to be Lugia, with its singing being similar to Lugia's in the movie. With them both obviously sharing similarities with whale songs, and they're dragons and they come from the water. Honestly, I'm not doing the best service to this theory, but I think it's really compelling. In one hand, it makes sense to have Lugia in the anime, considering Ho-Oh appears earlier on, and then most likely not having a design figured out for Lugia at the time. But on the other hand, Dragonite, especially in the first generation, is very rare, and the cloud at the end is very clearly meant to be a Dragonite, even sharing a similar pose as he tends to be depicted in. The episode also sets up the idea that there are bigger Pokemon in this world. So would this theory potentially disqualify it from being a big Pokemon if it was meant to be Lugia? Maybe. But even if it was meant to be Lugia, I think it still deserves to be here just because of how truly unique it is, and being the first time we see a Pokemon like this. Only 5 episodes later, we see a giant Tentacruel, with the reason this one growing to its size is because of a toxin Team Rocket used. Also, fun fact, this episode was banned in America due to a certain historical event happening. Surely you could say these are simple one-offs. What are the chances they'll happen again? It's not like there's gonna be an episode dedicated to giant Pokemon. Oh my gosh! The main cast and Team Rocket find themselves trapped on an island, where we see it seems to be inhabited by giant Pokemon, with us specifically seeing Pikachu, the Gen 1 starters, Kabutos, and the legendary birds. But it turns out all these Pokemon were actually all mechanical replicants. Mechanical, like robots, like Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm sorry, I can't go one of these videos without bringing up Five Nights at Freddy's. I have an addiction. It says it right here on my papers. I'm sorry. And then we get to Season 2, Episode 18, with these Pokemon seeming to gain their size and power from them being some sort of legends, with special artifacts being linked to them, with them also having these unique patterns of their bodies, with the 3 being Gengar, which is a special shadow Pokemon, which is different from these shadow Pokemon, because why not? You see what I did there? Then there's Alakazam and Jigglypuff. And in this episode, there's an epic, awesome, totally radical fight between them, with Jigglypuff intervening. But since I'd probably get copyrighted for actually playing you the footage, I'll just have to do it myself. We do actually see more big Pokemon in many of the later seasons of the anime, but just far less frequently. I always thought it was strange every occurrence of a giant Pokemon had a completely different explanation behind it, which only makes it harder to track the origins of it. And this also continues through the future parts of the anime as well. So with all of this, perhaps it's better if we take a look at the games instead. Maybe they'll have a much more consistent explanation for them. Right? In Sword and Shield, we're introduced to Dynamax Pokemon, a new form where, you guessed it, more big Pokemon! Yippee! The explanation behind these, however, are linked to Eternatus. See, I told you he'd come back up. Being the legendary Pokemon responsible for the Galar region's Dynamax phenomenon, which is an energy that leaks across the region, which is probably the most popular example of big Pokemon in the series, with it even being the first time we see big Pokemon in the games. Or is it? Because if you go back just one generation earlier, we actually already had big Pokemon, with these being the totem Pokemon from the Alola region. These were introduced in Pokemon Sun and Moon, and while they're nowhere near as big as the others we've seen in the series so far, they're still far larger than just a slight height alteration, being about twice the size compared to its normal counterpart. They serve as the bosses for the island trials, replacing traditional gym leaders, and just like Dynamaxing, they're special to their region. So that's 2 separate cases of large Pokemon, both handled very differently, and both tied to their region's lore. But if you want these bad boys, you're gonna wanna have to find 100 stickers in the Ultra games, or just fork over like $3 on Amazon. You get the same amount, but now you get to support stolen art. But with 2 games out of the way, I bet they'll stick with the same type of Pokemon they've already shown. I'm not even gonna lie to you, they don't. Alpha Pokemon. These might be my favorite example of big Pokemon in the series. They're huge and aggressive to the player, even willing to attack, with them being able to appear basically anywhere in the overworld. Unlike Totem or Dynamax Pokemon, you can actually catch them and fill your team with as many as you want. I even have a shiny Gutra. His name is Butter. You might be able to guess who my favorite Pokemon is. Yeah, it's obviously Aromatisse. I know, it's obvious. So by this point, we've got 3 distinct kinds of big Pokemon, each existing for completely different reasons. Dynamax Pokemon powered by Eternatus energy, Totem Pokemon being distinctly connected to the Alolan Trials, and Alpha Pokemon just being a part of the natural world of Hisui's past. Surely, that would be enough, right? The very next game, we get another new form, the Titan Pokemon. These are found in Scarlet and Violet, serving as the bosses of the Path of Legend story, being big because, I don't know, the 7 herbs and spices. Even though, despite the fact of any other Pokemon consumes it, they remain at their same scale. But hey, look, a Titan human! There are plenty of things to criticize about the Pokemon Company. The poor animations, rush releases, overpriced games, Ed Sheeran. But this inconsistency with giant Pokemon really gets me for some reason. Every recent generation seems to want to renovate on the same concept but slaps a new title on it. I know it really isn't a big deal, but it also is quite literally a big deal. You'd think with a series like this, you'd think they'd have it down by now. But hey, with Legends EA's release, maybe we won't run into the same issue. With the return of Mega Pokemon, there isn't any reason for anything of that sort.
Good grief, he's home!
I was wondering why this idea came up so often in the series. Obviously, it isn't the first time we've seen Thing But Big as a gimmick in a franchise, but I feel the answer was right in front of my eyes this entire time. A series about monsters made in Japan? I feel like there's one very easy comparison. Kaijus. With plenty of Pokemon being based off of kaijus, it makes sense they'd inspire other aspects of the series. Even though I complain about the many different explanations for these Pokemon types, a decent amount of them actually share similarities with the origins of many kaijus, with the totem Pokemon being kind of like Mothra, with it being considered divine and holding a special purpose. Then you have Eternatus, being a giant dragon from space who plans to wipe out the Galar region, much like King Ghidorah.
King Ghidorah.
Yeah, that. Being another dragon from space who threatens to harm the planet. And even one of the earliest examples, Tentacruel, destroys a city after a toxic chemical causes it to grow to its new height, drawing similarities to Godzilla's origins. Obviously, the series has had plenty of inspiration from these ideas, and while I'm not the most informed on kaijus, I'm willing to bet there are plenty of other examples I'm simply missing because I'm not the most informed. Even explanations for others like Alpha Pokemon, you can compare this to how many species used to be much larger in the past due to the climate. So them having many versions of huge Pokemon wasn't in fact a dumb choice, but instead world building? So I've been poking at a really cool part of the Pokemon series for no reason? I feel like a big jerk. I still think it's strange the time we see these big Pokemon is primarily in certain times in the series, with the games having all of these Pokemon in the last 3 generations. And in the anime, it's primarily earlier on when we see big Pokemon. If I had to guess, it's probably because earlier on the show they were able to use more ideas, which was less restricted by the lore of the series, considering it was the beginning of the series with only the basic ideas of Pokemon in mind. And with the newer games being on better systems, even though you probably can't tell, it made it easier for them to have bigger Pokemon without issues like the other games, even having accurately scaled Pokemon appear in Scarlet and Violet. So what I'm saying is, big Pokemon are really cool. And it's time to bring back Whaler to the series. Come on, baby, let's go.
Get a home run, baby. Let's go.
I know this is much shorter than my usual videos, but I really wanted to talk about this because even as a kid this has really interested me, with the Dragonite especially being something that made me so curious about this world of Pokemon as a child. This mysterious giant who despite the power only seeks others to bond with. Even if it was a Lugia, I don't think it would change much for me. If anything, it's a good thing. With Ho only showing the next generation of the series, Lugia ended up showing what Pokemon will one day become. But with that, I think I'm done here. I'll see all of you in whatever my next project is. And hey, look at the sub count. Don't you just want to make that a clean 1,000? It's so close. You want to do it now? You want to subscribe right now? Look right there. Look, you want to click that subscribe button? Literally, like right.